Hello, and welcome to another exciting edition of the Web of Conspiracy. I am your host, Adam Webb. It is great to be back with you again this week. Um, Excellent show I think I got planned for today. Something that to be honest, I'd sort of heard about the phenomenon, but um, was not as familiar with it as I would have liked to have been. So I spent a little more time researching this topic than some others that I do. Um, but for tonight or today's show, I'm going to talk about shadow people. Um, Very strange phenomenon. And as I said, I going into researching this topic, I was surprised at the number of reports that I found on this. And I've heard about it from here and there, and every now and again I'll see something on the internet. Um, but for the most part, I didn't really think it was as widespread a phenomenon as it turns out that it actually is. So we'll get into talking about shadow people here in a few minutes. But first, there's a few announcements and some things I want to talk about the show and some other things before I get too far ahead. First off, for those of you who have been listening to my show for going back to the old network for some time, you'll know that in the early part of August of this past year, I was diagnosed with melanoma. I had found three melanoma along my right upper arm and right shoulder. Um, After having, over the last few months now, gone through three surgeries, um, two of those melanoma have been completely removed, and I've received completely clean margins on those two spots. However, the third area, I still need to have a little more tissue removed. It's showing essentially precancerous stage zero, very early stage cancer. Um, I've received a number of different questions, inquiring as to how my health is and how I'm doing on that front. So I wanted to update everybody and let everyone know that next Thursday I'm going in for what I hope to be my fourth and final surgery. Um, I was already told that this one doesn't appear to be as needed in terms of the depth and as much tissue will need to be taken. So hopefully this won't be as difficult for me. Um, so with any hope and any luck, this will hopefully be my last surgery and I will have beaten this. As I had mentioned before, um, this is particularly for the new listeners. I had had a biopsy done, a sentinel lymph node after the first surgery, and it was discovered that the cancer did not spread to the closest lymph node. So that was an excellent sign that hopefully we caught this early enough and it hasn't spread anywhere else, and that with any luck, I can beat this as soon as possible. Beyond treatment, beyond that, I'm not sure. At this point, it was a matter of doing everything we could surgically before moving into the other stages of treatment. Fortunately, it was a low stage cancer, and I have every belief that catching it this early, the survival rates are very good. So I'm very hopeful, and I appreciate the emails and some of the things that I've gotten in the chat room, some other places. So just really thankful for everyone's concern who has inquired, and I appreciate it. Once again, next Thursday I'll be having hopefully my last surgery, and I don't anticipate this surgery affecting my ability to do a show next Friday. If for some reason that were to be the case, I will probably put together another best of, try to find an old show that some of my new listeners haven't come across, and maybe put something like that together if I'm not feeling well enough to do the show next Friday. However, I don't anticipate that being the case. So once again, thanks to everybody who has reached out and offered their support and their prayers, and it's appreciated. It really is. This is a scary thing to get that kind of diagnosis, and for those of you who have had that diagnosis or have had a loved one with that diagnosis, knows just how scary it is. I'm hopeful that we caught this early, and I feel good physically. I do. I feel uh, as if there's nothing going on, and so I suppose that's a good thing. Um, Having had the multiple surgeries in the area, that was a little difficult, but aside from that, I feel pretty good. So I'm looking forward to closing this chapter and moving on. So just want to once again thank everybody for their words of support and encouragement and their prayers, and it is definitely appreciated. Um, One other thing I want to talk about here, I hosted a live chat Monday on the show's website. So I know I originally planned on doing it Saturday. I had some technical issues. some reason. I'm not sure what's going on with my network, so I'm still trying to troubleshoot what's going on there. But um, fortunately, by Monday, all the bugs worked out, and I had no problems getting into the chat room and participating. I know I had a few people in there, so I just want to thank all those who did go in the chat room and join in the conversation. Really cool stuff. Um, and I've got a number of things, different, show ideas and even some things that came out of that. So it was really, really cool. And I plan on doing this on a monthly kind of basis where, I'll take an off evening from the show and have a little time, maybe spend an hour, maybe an hour and a half, depending, in the chat room just to chat with listeners and get your feedback as well as talk about some of these, strange and mysterious things that I talk about on the show. So it was a lot of fun, and I want to thank everybody who participated in that, left questions, even of those who you weren't able to join during that time that left me some questions. I just want to thank you all for taking part. It was really fun. It was really cool. So I appreciate that. And this is a good time to remind everybody, if you haven't liked the show on Facebook or followed on Twitter or Google Plus, do so. That's where I like to send out a lot of my messages in terms about what I'm going to do for the show and things like that. So check those things out. Um, the show's website, I'm constantly tweaking and working on making it as user friendly as possible. Right now, I don't own the domain, so it's a generic domain name, and I really want to try to at some point um, be able to pony up some cash to purchase my own personal domain and not have it be so complicated. But um, I've got archived episodes of the show up there now. I've got the most recent episode of the show, as well as posting news, and of course the chat room is there on the homepage. But I've moved the episodes to their own page on the website. So check all that out, and I'm going to try to expand and add some more archived shows on there as well to try to get for those of you who are new listeners, and I have received a number of brand new listeners to the show over the last couple of weeks. So, by all means, I hope to be able to expand some of that archive material as well. So that leads me into the next topic, and that's for those of you who haven't heard or haven't had a chance. The show is now available on Stitcher Radio on demand, which is awesome. I mean, it's amazing how many more listeners I've got from Stitcher. So it's a free app. It's available on iPhone, iPads, Androids, Nooks. Um, the app's like available just about every kind of format you can think of. It's like in over 4 million different cars. You can listen to the show anytime, anywhere you want. I think there's over, and for that matter, Stitcher has like over 20,000 shows on it. So there's tons of different material that you can discover, including, of course, listening to my show, plug. And you can listen to on demand. You can listen to it on the go. There's no downloading, syncing, anything like that. You can, select your favorites. It's awesome. Also, I just wanted for those of you who do listen to the show on Stitcher to please rate and review my show on Stitcher. Um, the more ratings and the reviews I get help bump me up into the playlist and help put the show out there. And I'm excited about the direction the show has gone and the growth the show has gotten. So I want to be able to try to see how much more I can reach here. And it's been a lot of fun. So if you listen to the show on Stitcher, please take the time to take 5 minutes, rate, review the show. I'd appreciate it. And same goes for those of you who listen to the show on iTunes and download the podcast afterwards. That's where the bulk of my listening audience comes from. So I would appreciate any kind of reviews that you put up there, just to kind of help me promote the show. Because to be honest, I'm operating on a shoestring budget here. So um, any kind of support that the listeners that you're all willing and able to do in terms of helping rate and review and help promote the show, I appreciate it. So thank you very much for that. And as I said before, I am amazed at the number of listeners I've had just this month of January. I'm well on my way to more than doubling my figure from last month. It's tremendous. It seems more and more people are jumping on the bandwagon here. That's awesome. And just want to thank for all the new listeners, as well as those of you who've been listening to the show, been listening since I started here in Spreaker, and came over with me from the old network. So it's been really great. It's been really exciting to be able to see something that you enjoy doing and enjoy taking the time to do and see it grow and to see the feedback that you get that, hey, people are enjoying what you do. Or in some cases, maybe not like it so much, maybe have some ideas, but that's the great thing about it. So it's really exciting to see the direction the show has grown, and it's grown bigger than I thought it would, and certainly bigger than I thought it would in such a short period of time. So, once again, thank you to all of you who've taken the time to listen to the show, and those of you who keep coming back. It is greatly appreciated. It's just awesome. So, thanks a lot. Now, now that I've gotten all that done, I want to head into the main topic for the day, the reason you listen to the show, right? So, for today, shadow people. Now, as I'd mentioned earlier at the start of the show, not a phenomenon that I was entirely familiar with in terms of being a distinctive phenomenon. I've heard of people refer to shadow people and as something more along the lines of the ghosts and things like that, and I'll get into that here in a bit. But I've never realized how such a phenomenon, in terms of the number of reports that people have about, they describe these shadows that move on their own. They're not attached to any other kind of physical living form. Very unique kind of phenomenon in many respects. Um, they're often described as being tall, dark figures with very few discernible features, very shadowy in that respect. That's why the term shadow people. Um, Usually they're given a description as being male, and I think some of that has to do with the size of the entities, that they're very tall, very big looking shadow type people. Um, there are some interesting little tweaks in the appearances. There are some that are depicted as being hooded, wearing, it appears that the head is covered in some sort of hood. There are some that are depicted as having these shadows, but they have red eyes. It appears that their eyes are glowing red, and that's the only real feature that can be seen of these particular types of shadow people. And another interesting phenomenon, at least branch of this, is some are depicted as wearing hats, and that's often described as what people refer to as the Hat Man. A wide-brimmed hat would appear to be on this dark shadow type of figure. Um, I'm not going to go specifically into the Hat Man alone because apparently, as it turns out, I could possibly do a show on the Hat Man alone. However, for the time being, I'm going to include him as being part of this conversation. Now, there are many people who have claimed to see these entities. Now, um, as I said, I was surprised at the number. Hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of reports that I've seen online. There's websites dedicated to just archiving stories on it. Now, how legitimate are all these stories? I cannot say. I can only vouch for what I found in the time that I had to research. Um, and it's hard to say how much of these people are just coming up with a really good story, and scary, and oh, okay, that'll work, and but perhaps it's whether or not it actually happened, who knows. But there are a few that claim that they've had legitimate encounters, uh, and it's terrifying to them. That's the thing, I think, in most cases, that for many, that there's this terrifying component. Now, many of the people who claim that they have seen the shadow figures, the most of the sightings, or at least as they start, appear as seeing a shadowy figure moving in the corner of their eye. They'll be sitting in their living room and they'll see what appears to be a black shadowy figure move in their peripheral. And when they turn to look, it quickly disappears or quickly moves into the shadows, or it's moves through a wall or the ceiling or something to that effect. So and it's argued by those people who've had this experience that the reason it does this is that that these entities know that they've been seen, and then just dramatically move as quickly as possible to avoid further detection. Um, Kind of a very intriguing kind of phenomenon. Now, to be honest, I've had, particularly in the home that I live in now, I've discussed this before. I live in a very old home built in the 1860s, and this home, I have seen similar types of things, something moving in the periphery, a shadow type thing. And to be honest, I've attributed it to me just seeing things and not really. And I know that seems strange. I do this show, and that would be the way that I would approach it. But to be honest, not having had any kind of other experience than that, I just really attribute it to me maybe seeing things, something in the core mind. I don't have perfect vision, so perhaps that it's a vision issue, right? Um, so that I guess suppose it's why I've approached this a little more skeptically in some respects. Um, there are some other intriguing reports about these shadow entities, and in particular, there's talk of people having what they call shadow animals appearing in their homes, where a shadow that is in the form of a dog or a shadow in the form of a cat. And those seem to be two of the most common um, shadow animal stories that I've come across. That there are these appear to be a dog running or a cat running in their house, and often they'll report their own pets having some sort of interaction with these other shadow animals, so whether it's a friendly interaction in some cases or an aggressive interaction, the growling or the hissing of the dog or the cat to in response to whatever this other shadow entity is. Um, so kind of a bizarre phenomenon. It's occurring in a number of different forms, and it occurs in a human form. And there's even reports of people claiming that, okay, we first off we started seeing the shadow dogs and cats, and then it turned into in front of us a shadow person. It developed into a full form figure of a man out of this dog or cat in some cases. Uh, really strange phenomenon. Now, as I read this, and I immediately started kind of thinking of some possible explanations, right? Um, and I started researching into theories as to what may be going on in this phenomenon. The most perhaps widely accepted theory in the mainstream as to what's happening in these experiences is that people are experiencing sleep paralysis. That a lot of times these are occurring right as someone's waking up, they see this shadowy figure or something to that effect at night when they're sleeping. And it's believed that this is a product of dreams where the sleep paralysis, and during our REM sleep, our bodies excrete hormones that help to paralyze muscle groups, and that's so that we don't reenact what we're dreaming, that we don't flail our arms and legs while we're having dreams. Now, what happens is that some people awaken from these dreams and they have the hormones still pumping through their body, and so it's still affecting their muscles, and they'll describe not being able to move, having a heavy feeling, this pressure on their chest that goes along with the experience. Um, and many believe that this is what's actually happening to individuals is that they're experiencing this some form of sleep paralysis, and they're really coming out of a dream, and then this is not something that's supernatural or something else. This is a natural phenomenon for those who are unfortunate enough to wake up from REM sleep and still have this hormone running through their body and preventing them from being able to move and preventing them from being able to feel like they can get enough air. Now, what I will say in response to this theory is that this does not seem to explain a number of daytime experiences where people are fully awake and fully conscious. Um, this does not explain those. Now, there are some who still think, well, perhaps this is an optical illusion, that there are vision issues or even some other brain type of issues. And in some cases, I think that's a distinct likelihood. I think that there is some legitimate explanation in some of the cases. However, there are others that are very compelling, and particularly those who do get photographic evidence, and there are some out there. Um, and it appears in one particular picture that I had come across while I'm not a photo expert and I've claimed this many times, it doesn't appear that it's been doctored. Now, not having the photo on hand and looking on the internet, two very different things, but it's a compelling picture, and there's a few out there that kind of make you wonder. Okay, well, maybe there really is something going on here. Now, another theory, and this is one that I had mentioned before, and this is sort of the way that I viewed for much of my time believing and hearing these shadow people stories is that perhaps they're ghosts, right? That these are just the spirits of the deceased loved ones, and this is one way that their form shows, and that they're just lacking visual features of being in this other realm, being on the other side of life. Perhaps that this is just the way that they appear. and that not every ghost appears as a white, misty um, form that is often described by others, that perhaps these are ghosts as well. Some believe that because they take on this dark form, that perhaps these are the ghosts of darker spirits or darker entities. That perhaps that these are, people who've done bad things in their lives or have evil intent, and that often they explain that as being why people have this terrified and this very strong response of fear to seeing these entities. Now that leads to another theory that's widely common in terms of an explanation as to what the shadow people are. And that's that perhaps that these are demons or they're some sort of other malevolent entities. And once again, going back to the terror and the fear that many people experience, and they think that these are demonic entities that are actually feeding upon that fear, that negative energy that is created by their presence. That they're feeding off of the fear of the individuals that are having experience. And as I mentioned before, there are descriptions of these shadow people as having these glowing red eyes, which for many they believe, well, because of the glowing red eyes, that's a demonic issue, and that was often also reported in the case of the Amityville horror, the Amityville case a number of years back, that there were reports of these dark shadows with glowing red eyes, and I think it was even depicted in the original movie. Um, but this idea that perhaps that this is a demonic entity that is looking to create havoc in someone's home and to feed upon the negative energies that are there. Um, and if so, that is certainly if in fact that's true, then for many there's a legitimate concern there. Now, another theory that I thought was rather intriguing was that perhaps this is a product, the shadow people are a product of astral projection. That there are some that believe that what we're seeing in these shadow people, these are actually the spirits of people who are leaving their bodies while they're asleep. Um, and then that this actually could explain a big portion of the experiences that people have, and that many claim that these shadow people are often disengaged from what they're doing, that they don't seem to be concerned about what the humans are doing, the waking people, that these shadow people, in many cases, are just going through other motions, um, and that perhaps the people that are experiencing the fear is just the fear of the unknown. It's not anything other than that. That the shadow people that are going about doing what is described by many as having some fairly normal routines, that these are in fact just people who have projected themselves out of their bodies during the sleep state and are traveling across the world. Perhaps they're nowhere near their bodies when this is happening. And this perhaps would account for the number of the sightings that are occurring at all hours of the day and night, based on people sleeping all around the world at different times. So it's an intriguing theory, and certainly there's not a whole lot of evidence to support it, but it's an interesting thought if in fact that is the case, that perhaps people are leaving some sort of essence of themselves visible when they do astrally project. That is, of course, if you believe in astral projection. Now, another theory is that, well, these shadow people are actually aliens, they're extraterrestrials. And people who claim to have abduction experiences often have very similar experiences to those who claim to be visited by shadow people, that they can't move, they can't breathe, they feel a heavy feeling on their chest, they see these aliens moving through walls, very similar to the shadow people, very similar movements and very kind of similar situation. Um, Once again, however, I think in some of these particular cases, you begin to question, well, perhaps sleep paralysis is involved here as well. You know, if it's a very similar experience, a very similar phenomenon, then perhaps that is the reason why some are experiencing it, in the nighttime hours, as is often the case with the extraterrestrial abductions. Now, I'm not trying to say that all those who've had extraterrestrial abductions are just experiencing sleep paralysis, because I don't necessarily think that's the case. But I do think that there could be a case made that perhaps in a few that could be an explanation. I certainly don't claim to be an expert in all of these things, but I'm willing to wager that there are some that are experiencing the sleep paralysis and are believing it to be either the shadow people or extraterrestrials or something along those lines, when in fact it can be explained physiologically, especially if they do not have any other phenomenon occurring, strange marks, other experiences, other situations occurring, memories of being someplace else. If it's just solely this experience, then perhaps sleep paralysis is in fact the best explanation there as well. Now, I think the most intriguing possibility is the idea of interdimensional beings. Now, not necessarily just extraterrestrials, but beings that are moving between dimensions, or even perhaps time travelers that can move between dimensions and time. Um, and that these beings that are operating on a different dimension are either appearing very briefly, that the dimensions are close enough that there is some, I guess you say, touching of the dimensions where these beings are capable of being seen, or perhaps we're able to be seen by them as well. Um, it is a scientific fact, at least in terms of most scientists agree, that there are other dimensions than the three that we're perceiving. So it's not completely implausible that there are other beings living in these other dimensions, that perhaps they can see us and we can't see them, or perhaps they see us in the same ways that we see them. And that's an intriguing thought there as well. That we only see very briefly in these brief fleeting moments of time, that we just happen to be in a place where the physics involved, the dimensions involved, make it just so that these entities can be seen in some strange visage. Perhaps they really don't appear as shadowy. That's just the look that we see based on uh, the fact that we're operating in two different dimensions. There's also the possibility that these interdimensional beings, perhaps they have the ability to move between dimensions, that they in fact are a more shadowy type figure, that they're more of this energy, or this non you know physical form, but something that cannot be tangibly touched, and they are capable of moving between dimensions. Now, if that's the case, then that certainly would be another plausible explanation, that perhaps these are just truly entities that can move between dimensions. They've somehow mastered the ability, or they've just always had the ability because they're in a different form than us. Um, Now, when I did the old show, I did an entire show on string theory. And for those of you who aren't familiar with it, that would perhaps be a great old show that I think at some point I'm going to go ahead and put up in the archives for everybody, because it's an incredible concept, the idea of quantum physics and what may or may not be possible. But if I were to look at something beyond a natural explanation, I would think that interdimensional beings, or even perhaps maybe a spiritual beings, ghosts or something along that nature, perhaps those are the best explanations outside of the occasions where it can be explained by a physical natural phenomenon. Um, and once you begin to unravel quantum physics, it changes the way that you perceive a lot of things. And as a result, I looked at this phenomenon and immediately began to think about the possibility of interdimensional beings. So to me, it would seem like it's a distinct possibility that that could be one factor going on here. However, I think there's certainly plenty of work to be done, and those who go out in the field and do the research and investigate the places that have these experiences, you know, hopefully that we can get a little more information as to what's going on, and perhaps capture some more physical evidence as to what's going on with the shadow people phenomenon. So, well, that's what I have for you today on shadow people. I'd love to get your feedback. Let me know what you think. Do you think it's an interdimensional? Do you think it's extraterrestrial? Do you think it's ghosts, demons, or just a product of sleep paralysis? Is that truly the blanket explanation for all these cases? Um, I would love to get listener feedback. Let me know, what you think about this. It's something, as I admit, I'm certainly not as familiar with as I have been some other topics, and I learned an awful lot during the research process for this show. So just want to thank everybody for tuning in. Let me know what you think about the show. Rate the show on Stitcher and iTunes. And stop by the show's website. Check out the stuff I've got up there. I post news up there as well. Check us out on Facebook, Twitter, Google+. Let me know what you think. And any other ideas for the show or things that you would like me to talk about, let me know that too. You can always email me. You got all the links and information posted everywhere. So look for it on the website and social media and all that. So once again, I have every intention of being back with you next Friday. If for some reason something changes, I'll post updates on the website as well as the social media. But I have every intention of being back with you next Friday. So until then, hope everyone has a great week, and I'll talk to you then.